Hi, I'm Charles and welcome to 22nd Century, a podcast exploring the next greatest technological marvels, debunking myths and discovering the next big thing. I'll be interviewing a new guest every fortnight to discuss a different emerging technology and uncover its impacts on our society over the next 100 years. Today, I spoke to Richard Ballard, co-founder of Growing Underground, an urban farm situated right under Clapham Common tube station. Hi Richard, thank you very much for letting me come along to the farm.
Hi, thanks for coming.
So the first kind of thing I would like to do is just ask you to just introduce yourself, how you got involved in Growing Underground, where kind of the business is at, just a top line.
Okay, so my name's Richard. I'm one of the co-founders of Growing Underground. This all started back in 2012. Myself and Steve, my business partner, came together and came up with the sort of concept. This came sort of out of my studies. I did a film degree, and some of my things I was looking at on that film degree about hidden London and about future cities sort of merged into the idea and the sort of concept really of Growing Underground. And then myself and Steve pushed that forward. Currently we are we've been going for nearly coming into 7 years now, but for sort of 2 years in production. So a lot of the time was prior to that was the sorting things out and getting the site sorted and getting investment and building the site. So we're currently now supplying into some of the major retailers like Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, Ocado, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, and to food service into New Covent Garden Market, obviously, which is just down the road. Yep. And we are now about a team of about 20 people. We are growing fast.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah. Our plan is to expand this site out. We're currently using about 20% of it, and we're looking to expand into the rest of the tunnel.
Cool. The first question I was just going to ask you is what's the biggest misconception or myth people have about what you do, about the farm, or how you grow?
Right. I think one of the separately from that, one of the big misconceptions is the size of it. Like I said, everyone thinks it's actually much smaller than it is, and when they get down there, they realise it's actually quite big. Yeah. But yeah, the main misconception is, I suppose, would be the difference from this to conventional agriculture. Mm-hmm. And how this is futuristic or unnatural, and all these are quite fair points. We've had 10,000 years of agriculture, which isn't actually natural either. It's a man-made, but obviously using soil and the sun and natural things to grow. And what we're about as a company, we're not here to replace that. This is not how we think. Even though we think this is definitely a growing industry in the future, we'll be growing more crops and more different varieties, possibly even in 20, 30 years, possibly even the staples, like wheat, soy and maize. But for now, this isn't looking at replacing that in any way. It's about complementing it and doing it in a different way. And I think this really works at the moment for salad crops, that have a shorter shelf life, growing closer to city, saving space. We actually use very little space when you're growing things on top of each other in a vertical stack. But yeah, I think the misconception is the natural farming methods versus futuristic, and some people are a little bit concerned about that. Although a lot of produce that they potentially buy already comes from hydroponically grown. There's a lot of hydroponically
maybe people aren't even aware of.
Exactly, and a lot of large establishments that are growing in glass, that are growing this sort of crop, or our salad crops for the UK, because of the temperature, and probably having 9 months of the year where it's quite cool, and are grown in a glass house with LED lights to supplement the length of the day, and using very similar methods to what we're using. We just basically copied that model, put it underground, because of the temperature saving for the crops that we grow, which need between 20 and 25 degrees. Conventional growers in glass houses or greenhouses using the same equipment that we use, and we pretty much just copy that model, put it downstairs, and then all that we're doing that's different is we're using 100% artificial light rather than the natural light. And we get the same from that. I mean, the plants don't use all of the spectrum that they get from the sun anyway. The only thing we're getting that's different, or we're not getting from the sun, which is the ultraviolet light element of the spectrum, because that's quite expensive to recreate in LEDs, even though they can do that now.
Is there a detriment to not using, apart from what we see here, the UV, from missing out on the UV? Is that a bad thing for the plants? Like, are they any different? Do they taste any different?
There's no taste difference. I mean, we've done a taste test. Growth difference. You can change the growth difference. You can have more elongated, more bushy crop, depending on the light spectrum. You can force sugars and starches and different flavours from different light spectrums. Yeah. But it's still very relatively unknown. I mean, the light spectrum that we can see is between 400 and 700 nanometers, and that spectrum goes on for infinity pretty much. And so you can see where there's only a small amount that we actually see. Yeah. So there's a lot still to learn, I think, on the spectrum, light spectrums.
And then so obviously you guys are underground. Where we are now, underground. But I would just like to kind of know, why underground compared to going vertically? Because there's a lot of talk, in the media or in future press about going up, especially in skyscrapers in cities. Why down? And if down is better, or if you think they're just as good, is there a limit onto the number of places that we can grow underground in terms of tunnels?
Yeah. So the reason we went under was because we actually did look at going vertical before, but we saw that the real estate within cities is constantly increasing, so it's very difficult to be competitive with space above ground within a city. But you could do that just outside a city, there's no problem on that, depending on your method of delivery and bringing stuff in. If you're using, for us, if you're using green vehicles or electric vehicles that are more sustainable, but there's issues around the technology with that, with having refrigeration to deliver as well, because you don't get the miles that you would get from standard fuel at the moment. That will obviously change in the future. So we looked at both models. We decided on the ground because of the cost of the real estate, which is just over £1 per square foot, much different to anything above ground. But then after trialing it and doing the trials we've done on the site, we realised there was a lot of other added benefits we didn't realise before that came out of that. And one of them is being an insulated tunnel with 100 foot of earth above us. We've got a stable temperature of about 15 degrees year round. The crops that we grow prefer between 20 and 25. So that's a relatively small increase. So whether it's minus 4 degrees outside or 30 degrees outside, it's pretty much 15 degrees downstairs, other than the ventilation that's drawn in, which warms it up or cools it down slightly. But we can control that. It's not a huge change, and when you get to the middle of the tunnel, it's dissipated and balanced out, and it's reached its sort of equilibrium. So for us, it's a much easier area to control as a controlled environment, which is so it's easier to control the temperature, the humidity, CO2, and air movement within that space. Obviously, enabling us to control the crop and have a consistent crop coming out as and when we require, our customers require, cutting down food waste in the long term.
What kind of foods are you growing at the moment? And what kind of barriers or limitations are there from going from more salad-based products to something like apples, pears, or barley or wheat?
So I'm currently growing microgreens, and that's sort of the high end of the market. This is still a relatively new technology.
Yeah.
I like to sort of describe it. Somebody said once that this sort of industry is pretty similar to where computers were in the 60s, where big mainframes, and you see
Couldn't carry them around with you.
Exactly, and we've progressed since that with computers, and this industry will do the same. We're currently growing leafy greens, baby leaf, and pea shoots, radish, all on a micro level, salad rocket, garlic chive. And the reason for this is we can turn that crop around in anything from 5 to 20 days.
So much quicker turnaround.
Yeah, but they are much smaller.
Okay.
But micros, as you probably saw downstairs, we're using the same seed for a coriander plant, a full-grown coriander plant, as we are for a micro. The benefit you're getting is you're getting lots of small plants. So you've got intense flavour, and that's what the interest is from the consumer and the chef. But you also, and there's some studies that show that you're getting a lot more nutrient, because obviously each seed has its sort of nutrient compacted into that, and you're getting a lot more plants in a smaller area. And again, that reflects in the price, because we're using a lot more seed than what you would use for doing conventional herbs.
So if you were to grow those in a normal field, right, above ground, if you were to grow the herbs that you were using, effectively they would grow to the same size as normal agriculture, or are they specifically designed for?
Oh yeah, they would. Yeah,
they
exactly,
would.
Yeah. But the only thing is, we're growing them in a very dense environment, close together.
In the tray.
And if we did it like that, then you get problems as it grew bigger, because you've got
almost like when you grow too many carrots in a tub.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't end up with carrots at all. It's just like the roots. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you would probably get like mold and various things. So we grow. We've got a density to the height that we grow, and then we harvest, and we know that we've done a lot of tests on that to get that right. But yeah, I mean, with the technology, I see, as I said, with the technology, the advancements in technology, advancements in light spectrums, the cost of energy, even though at the moment it's going up. I think certainly if we develop a system where we have lots of producers of energy on a small scale, green energy, everyone producing solar electricity from solar PV on their roofs.
You guys all run on renewable energy as well, right?
So the whole site's powered by good energy, which comes across the grid to us, so we're not producing our own energy, but everything we use is good, green. And I don't see this working any other way than using green energy, because it's energy intensive. You're using lights. If you're using that from a conventional source, then for me it doesn't stack up. You've got to be using it for some sort of renewable. Or, talking about the planet as a whole, and which is the aim of all of us to reduce carbon emissions and address that. So as that technology advances, I think it is possible light spectrums, reduced energy prices, to start growing more crops and becoming competitive with. Like at the moment, in the UK, we can't compete with a company that's growing heads of lettuce. We could grow a head of lettuce, but it would be more expensive than conventionally grown.
That's pretty much based on the energy?
Based on the energy, pretty much, yeah. The technology's more or less there, and there's probably a little bit more work to be done, but in the next 5 years, that potentially will be there. But it's still cheaper to produce a head of lettuce in Spain and drive it up.
Which is insane.
Yeah, well, and we're run on economics, and that's how
you've got to do what makes profit at the end of the day.
Exactly, but then moving on from that, in the next maybe 10 to 20 years, it's going to be more cost effective to do it with soft fruits, maybe cucumbers and other salad crops, and then who knows, in 20 plus years we could be doing the likes, the staples like wheat, soy, maize, and the benefit of that is that the more that humans impact the planet by expanding, we're going to increase population, next to 2 billion people expected on the planet. We've all got to eat.
We've all got to live somewhere.
And exactly, and we're spreading out across the world into natural sort of habitats, and agriculture is a big part of that. So if we can grow more food in a smaller space, and start growing stacks of soy on the outskirts of a city in Brazil, then maybe we don't need to cut down the Amazon to
That's true.
create agricultural land.
And then they can supply themselves locally as well.
Exactly.
Brazil can supply Brazil, England can supply England.
Exactly.
Just continuing, just touch on the sustainability. How important are things like the Sustainable Development Goals to you guys, and how does that fit in with your values as a business and what you do, whether it be growing the crops or packaging or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the UN's United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are very important. I actually sit on a board called Fast Forward 2030, right. Which is looking to inspire and get small businesses involved in achieving the United Nations SDGs. We've been doing this business longer than they've been around, so our values were
there before they.
But we are working towards several of those, and that's very important. I think it's something we've all got to look at. I don't think any business starting today can start a business that isn't sustainable. You've got to have that.
You've got to have that consideration.
And you're seeing that with the generations. Millennials think much differently to our generation, and that's already embedded in their psyche from it's you've grown up with,
almost birth.
You've grown up with the issues of the planet more relevant than I did when I was growing up. I was unaware, and a lot of people were unaware.
Awesome. I'd love to do a little quick fire round with you, if that's alright. So just so you can't see it before. So, with Christmas dinner, sprouts or no sprouts?
Sprouts.
Favourite vegetable to eat?
Favourite vegetable? I love all vegetables. I'm a big fan. I'm quite into fennel at the moment.
Okay.
In a soup, fennel and tarragon.
Nice.
Together.
And to grow?
To grow, it's got to be microherbs, hasn't it?
The keep track. Mayo or ketchup?
Neither.
M&S or Waitrose?
Couldn't possibly say.
Okay. Early riser or night owl?
Early riser.
Amazon or Waterstones?
Amazon.
And your favourite tube line?
Victoria.
How come?
Because I live in Stoke Newington and I come to work on the Victoria line. It's generally pretty quick.
I thought it would be the Northern line because you guys are like 4 below the Northern line. But
unfortunately, this morning it was held up, but generally it's very reliable.
That's okay. And then the final question I'd just like to ask you is, we've touched on this briefly, but just where do you see the future of growing underground in over the next 100 years? And kind of urban farming in general, whether it's vertical, whether it's below ground, where do you see the industry moving? And for you guys,
So I would like to see a system where there's a mixture of both conventional agriculture and this new technology, and I think there's with soil degradation and lots of reports coming out from the UN that we've got 60 to 100 years left of soil. I would like to see that being replenished, and that could be done by a proper collection, a food collection system, composting back onto the land, and this circular economy, and growing, a lot of our crops still in the soil. But I think for the next 10 years, this industry will grow rapidly, predominantly with leafy greens, heads of lettuce, microgreens, that sort of thing. Then probably the next sort of phase after that will be introducing, as I mentioned, the cucumbers, the peppers, the other side crops, and then and some soft fruits, and maybe baby root vegetables, and that will, who knows where this technology will go, but hopefully that will lead on to producing the staples like wheat, soy, and maize, and sort of enable current sort of threatened agriculture land from soil degradation and other areas like rainforest to replenish and go back to natural form.
Do you think it will be mostly smaller companies or players or businesses that are kind of like setting up, or do you think it will be big agricultural companies or kind of farmers with like hundreds of acres suddenly moving into it, or where do you think the shift will be?
Yeah, I mean, there's knowing the industry through people that we have on our board and people that we communication with. There's a mixture on that. Some of the bigger companies are a bit more forward thinking and
Well,
looking at this as well, whereas some are sort of held back, and the big landowners, their business is soil, so they probably will look at this, but they're not looking to transform that, and rightly so, because I don't think we are going to have this massive change and where it all goes to one or the other. It's a mixture. I think it's predominantly smaller or younger entrepreneurs coming out with ideas like this, and it's going to be a mixture over, in greenhouses still, the way we've been doing it for a long time. But just it's going to be very interesting the next 20 years.
Super. I think coming from a farming background, I think it's really interesting to see all the different players and businesses doing it differently. Super. Thanks a lot, Richard.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, please leave us a review on the iTunes store if you're listening on an Apple device. It helps us out massively. And subscribe to hear about all the other exciting new emerging technologies we're going to uncover next. If you've got any examples of any companies or technology that we should be speaking to, then also please let me know. I'll leave all the ways of getting in contact with me down in the show notes. Thanks.